Chapter 33. Mu Yang wakes up to the tinkling sound of the zither. Because Mu Yang was also good at playing the zither, she could hear that the sound of the zither was very pleasant to listen to, but there was not a trace of emotion in the music. It was as if there was a puppet mechanically moving the zither strings according to the music score. Although it's very good, it's not as touching as Xiao Bao's. Xiao Bao. Mu Yang suddenly sits up and looks around. She sees that this place seems to be a cave, but the surroundings are empty, not even a shadow of a person. Xiao Bao, where are you? Come out. Mu Yang shouts for a long time, but she doesn't get any response. At this time, Mu Yang suddenly feels a gentle female voice in her mind. The godly musician's inheritance. The first trial begins. What godly musician's inheritance? At this moment, the originally gentle melody that was like the sound of flowing water suddenly changed into a hurried and impassioned music. It's clearly the sound of a zither, but in Mu Yang's ears, it seems as if there are thousands of troops and horses galloping, and billowing waves of a river. The blood in her body is stirred up by this music for no reason. Mu Yang's cheeks are flushed, and there is a scarlet luster flickering in her eyes. At the same time, on the walls of the cave, countless swords begin to fly towards her from all directions. Mu Yang's figure flashes quickly like a phantom, easily avoiding the flying swords. However, as the music becomes more and more urgent, the number of flying swords also increases, and the speed is also getting faster and faster. If at the beginning, the flying swords were only 7 or 8 profound stage cultivators raising their swords at her. But later on, it's dozens of earth stage cultivators attacking her at the same time. Even with Mu Yang's cultivation, she is still somewhat strained, and cold sweat breaks out on her forehead. However, the most frightening thing is not this. The most frightening thing is that, as the music becomes more and more urgent, Mu Yang feels her heart beating faster and faster. Her originally clear eyes also start to blur into a fantasy. One moment, her stomach is being cut open, and the bloody placenta is being dug out. The next moment, Gong Chenxue is holding Xiao Bao and throwing him into the furnace. One moment, she was in a pitch-black cave. That terrifying man was pressing her under his body. The scorching hot rolling and tearing pain made her want to immediately faint. The light and shadow changed, and Xiao Bao fell from the high cliff again. He could only watch helplessly as Xiao Bao fell into a pool of blood and flesh. Whoosh! The sword qi finally cuts through Mu Yang's clothes, and blood spurts out. An intense pain comes from her arm, but it also makes Mu Yan suddenly wake up from the illusion. Gritting her teeth, she observed the surroundings of the cave while nimbly dodging the flying swords. Finally, when the level of the flying swords slowly increased to the level of nearly 100 heaven-rank ancient martial artists' attacks, she finally found the source of all the attacks. It was a grey zither that was stuck high up on the wall. It was not eye-catching at all. If one did not look carefully, it would be impossible to discover its existence. However, this inconspicuous zither was actually plucking the strings on its own, producing music. The music reverberated in the cave. When it came into contact with dodging, it immediately turned into sword qi and attacked her. Mu Yan clenches her teeth. She steps on the wall and soars up. She quickly grabs a vine hanging down from the top of the cave. The dark force in his body revolved and struck the zither. Chapter 34. Those flying swords are getting denser and denser, and the mysterious energy they contain is even more frightening. Mu Yang is almost unable to dodge all the swords. The wounds on her body are increasing. However, she doesn't panic. Instead, her pair of eyes are getting brighter and colder. Suddenly, she takes the zither. She doesn't circulate her mysterious energy, but plucks the strings with her slender fingers. The clear and melodious sound of the zither from the high mountains and flowing rivers overlaps with the desolate desolation of an ambush. In the beginning, the desolation has the upper hand, and Mu Yang's clothes are almost dyed red with blood. However, as the two kinds of zither sounds overlap more and more, the desolate and impassioned zither sound is slowly suppressed. In the end, it completely disappears in the cave. At the same time, those piercing sword qi also disappear without a trace. Mu Yang breathes a sigh of relief. She can no longer hold the zither in her hand, and it falls to the ground. She hears a gentle female voice in her ear. Congratulations, you have passed the first trial of the God Musician's inheritance. Now, you will be sent to the second space of inheritance. As soon as the voice falls, the scene in front of Mu Yang changes. Before she could see where she is, she hears a familiar voice, Nyang Qin, Xiao Bao. Just as the ecstatic thought turns in her mind, a small body rushes into her arms like a cannonball. Mu Yang staggers from the impact, and the wounds on her body burst open, burning with pain. However, there is a bright and beautiful smile on her face. Holding the little person tightly in her arms, Mu Yang finds that her body is trembling unconsciously. She can endure all the pain and setbacks, but she can't accept Xiao Bao leaving her. Xiao Bao also hugs Mu Yang tightly, his little head buried in her arms, reluctant to leave. No matter how calm he usually appears, no matter how expressionless, Xiao Bao is still just a 4-year-old child. Suddenly, Xiao Bao's sensitive little nose smells a strong smell of blood. He straightens up, and only then does he realize that Mu Yang is covered in blood. Nyang Qin, you're hurt. The child's crisp and childish voice suddenly rises, trembling and choking. His beautiful blue eyes suddenly become moist, as if he is trying his best to restrain the tears from falling. Mu Yang's current appearance was also somewhat miserable. His originally snow-white clothes had been completely dyed red with blood. Mu Yang takes out the hemostasis medicine she has on her and casually sprinkles it on the wound. She smiles carelessly and says, "It's nothing. It looks serious, but it's actually just a superficial wound." "Mother, does it hurt?" Xiao Bao asked in a choked voice. Mu Yan beamed and said, "As long as Xiao Bao blows it for Nyang Qin won't hurt anymore." When Xiao Bao heard this, he immediately held Mu Yang's hand without hesitation. He puffed up his cheeks and carefully blew on it. His small face is clearly cold, but his movements of blowing on the wound are so nervous, as if he's afraid that Mu Yang will be in pain with just a little bit more force. Mu Yang looks at her son like this and her heart softens into a complete mess. She hugged him in her arms and kissed him. Then, she smiled and said, "Xiao Bao is really amazing. After blowing on me a few times, Nyang Qin doesn't feel any pain anymore." Xiao Bao's eyes are sparkling as he looks at Mu Yang, the corners of his mouth curling up into a shallow arc that can't be seen. But everyone knew that the little fellow was very happy at this moment. Chapter 35. Mu Yang casually bandages her wound, then she gets up and holds Xiao Bao's hand as she looks around. She sees that this place is completely different from the cave just now. It's like an abandoned palace. The reason why it's abandoned is because the entire palace is covered in dust, and there are many places with cobwebs. Tables, chairs, and stone benches are overturned on the ground, and there are also many wine glasses that have been smashed on the ground, forming cobwebs. Even in various places in the room, there are several corpses that have already turned into skeletons. Looking at the twisted and broken appearance of those skeletons, one can imagine the pain these people suffered before they died. Looking at this desolate palace, Mu Yang's heart surges with an inexplicable sense of desolation. She feels as if she's looking at the scene of a flourishing dynasty collapsing. But it's only for a moment, and she throws it to the back of her mind. If there's anything special about this palace, it's that it's filled with musical instruments. That's right, all kinds of musical instruments. There's pipa, guzheng, guqin, xiao, flute, se, zun, sheng. Any musical instrument that Mu Yang has seen before can be seen here. It's just that some of these instruments are already very shabby, some are bright and beautiful, and there are even a few that faintly exude a frightening aura that makes people's hearts tremble. Mu Yang remembers what the gentle female voice said, the inheritance of the godly musicians. She's never heard of the godly musicians in the Yenwu continent before. Now, it seems that this inheritance should be a musician, right? In the Yenwu continent, there are also ancient warriors who major in musicians. Using internal force into a musical instrument can disturb a person's mind in battle, and when cultivated to the extreme, the sound waves can also hurt people. There are even musicians who can use music infused with internal force to soothe a patient's mind, so that the patient can recover sooner. But in general, musicians are only an auxiliary profession. In the Yenwu continent, where the strong are respected, there aren't many people who major in musicians. As Mu Yang is thinking, she sees Xiao Bao striding with his short legs, carrying a snow-white rabbit over. Nyangqin, here, stir-fried rabbit meat. The little guy hands over the fat rabbit, as if he's asking for praise. Mu Yang picks up the fat rabbit, but finds that it's sleeping like a dead pig, and doesn't feel anything when it's being strangled. She can't help but be curious. What happened to it? Did it get hurt when it fell off the cliff? Xiao Bao shook his head. The rabbit swallowed the bad woman's egg and fell asleep. Mu Yan stares blankly. She waits for Xiao Bao to finish saying that the fat rabbit has swallowed the holy beast egg that Gong Chenxue has tried every possible means to make a contract with. For a moment, she doesn't even know how to make an expression. In his previous life, after Gong Chenxue contracted a holy beast, she was in the limelight for a while. In this life, in order to save Xiao Bao, she fell off the cliff. She thought that there was no way to destroy Gong Chenxue's plan. He didn't expect that the sacred beast egg was actually swallowed by this fat rabbit. After a long time, she couldn't help but laugh out loud. Hey, stupid rabbit, looks like you're not completely useless, right? Alright, seeing that you've made a great contribution, we won't eat stir-fried rabbit meat. As she said that, Mu Yang hugged the rabbit's fluffy body and rubbed against it. She felt that the smooth and soft touch was really not bad. When Xiao Bao saw this scene, he couldn't help but tighten his little face. He hugged Mu Yang's thigh and raised his little face to look at Mu Yang. Chapter 36. Xiao Bao nodded obediently and held the snow-white rabbit in his arms. Nyangqin said it was stir-fried rabbit meat, then it was stir-fried rabbit meat. Nyangqin said it was his Ling pet, then it was his Ling pet. What Nyangqin said was right. Mu Yang, however, looked at the rabbit with a deep and serene gaze. To be able to swallow a sacred beast egg without indigestion, it seemed like this was no ordinary rabbit. His son's luck was really too heaven-defying. He had randomly picked up a rabbit, and it turned out to be even more powerful than a saint beast. As she was thinking, a gentle female voice suddenly sounded in her mind. The second trial of the god musician's inheritance begins. Within half an hour, you need to choose from among the musical instruments in this palace a musical instrument that belongs to the Shun musician inheritance. If you choose the wrong one, all living beings in the space will die. If you choose the right one, you will enter the third inheritance trial space. The countdown begins now. Mu Yan is startled. Shun musicians inherited musical instrument. There were at least a few hundred musical instruments placed everywhere in the palace. There was not even a direction to choose from. How was she going to choose? Suddenly, her eyes fell on the twisted skeletons, and her pupils shrank. It turned out that these skeletons did not belong to the previous owner of the palace. Instead, it's those who have entered the Shun musician's space of inheritance, but ultimately failed the trial. Because there was a musical instrument beside each of the skeletons. Therefore, if he made the wrong choice, he would end up like them. Most importantly, he would lose his son, Xiao Bao. Mu Yan frowns. She really wants to withdraw from this damned Shun musician inheritance, but this palace is obviously a closed space. Even if she wants to retreat, she can't. Mother, what's wrong? Xiao Bao raised his head and asked. Mu Yan presses her temples and says, Nyangqin is currently undergoing an assessment to find a Shun musician heritage instrument among so many instruments. But Nyangqin doesn't have a clue right now. Xiao Bao said, oh. He tilted his head and asked, is it the most powerful musical instrument? I think so. As soon as Mu Yang's voice falls, Xiao Bao runs to a corner of the room with his short legs. He kicks away more than a dozen worn-out zithers and digs out an even more worn-out one from the inside. Then, he drags it over to her, huffing and puffing. Mu Yan is flabbergasted, and a gentle female voice immediately rings in her mind, you have chosen the inheritance musical instrument, confirm or deny. If he did not put down his instrument after the countdown of 3, it meant that he had made his choice. 3, 2. Xiao Bao, quickly put it down. Mu Yang's expression suddenly changed, and he pounced towards his son like lightning. But in the end, it's still a step too late. In his mind, the final voice counting down to 1 appears, inheritance musical instrument selected, the second trial of the Shun musician inheritance has ended, the trial result is, Mu Yang hugs Xiao Bao tightly in her arms and closes her eyes. At this moment, he could only resign himself to fate. However, in the next moment, she hears the gentle female voice pause for several breaths before announcing the result. The result of the trial is success. Now, the third Shen musician inheritance space will be opened. The scene in front of him changed once again, but Mu Yang was too lazy to pay attention to it. She looked at Xiao Bao with a dumbfounded expression, then looked at the tattered zither in his little hand. Xiao Bao, do you know what zither this is? Xiao Bao shook his head. Mu Yang, then why did you pull it out? Xiao Bao thought for a moment, then said, because it's the strongest. Chapter 37. The wood on it is tattered, there's not the slightest bit of pressure or internal force coming from it, and several of the strings are even broken. How does her family's Xiao Bao know that it's strong? Listening to Mu Yan's question, Xiao Bao is also puzzled. In the end, he can only say, Xiao Bao just knows that it's very strong. Mu Yan holds Xiao Bao in one hand and the tattered zither in the other. She can't help but lament. Those people who died in the second inheritance space, they probably wouldn't have thought that the Shen musician's inheritance instrument, which sounds very grand, would actually be such a broken zither. This isn't a broken zither, but the most precious treasure of heaven and earth that could move unhindered across the three realms and make all living things bow in submission, the Tianmo Qin. The familiar female voice suddenly rings out again, answering the question in Mu Yan's heart. But this time, the female voice is no longer gentle. Instead, it has a deep and suffocating sense of oppression that comes from experiencing the vicissitudes of life. Mu Yan looks down at the broken zither in her hands, speechless. Although she has never heard of the Tianmo Qin, the name alone is cool and domineering. Not to mention the prefix move unhindered across the three realms and make all living things bow in submission. But the zither in her hands is extremely broken. Every time she fiddles with it, rotten wood shavings will fall down. Something that no one would buy even if it was sold is actually a precious treasure of heaven and earth. Mu Yan expresses her serious doubts. However, she doesn't dwell on the Tianmo Qin. Instead, she narrows her eyes and asks, "Who are you? What is this place?" The female voice slowly says, "This is the Shen musician's third inheritance space. If you want to know who I am, then go through the third trial. If you succeed, I will tell you my identity. If you fail, I will obliterate you and the little fairy's body and soul. Now, are you ready?" Wait a minute. When Mu Yan hears that her son will be obliterated if she fails, her face immediately changes. "I didn't say that I wanted to accept the inheritance. He, since you are fated to come in and have chosen the Tianmo Qin, then everything is beyond your control." The third trial of the Shen musician inheritance begins. As soon as the voice falls, Mu Yan feels the world spinning, and everything around her disappears without a trace. She has been sent to a strange space. There were no doors or windows in sight. No matter where one looked, there was only endless darkness. Not far ahead, there was a glowing light, like a candle flame. However, when Mu Yang wanted to approach the light, he discovered that it was very far away from him. Mu Yang tightly knit her brows, her heart was already in a perilous situation. From the very beginning, she discovered that the inheritance of this Shen musician is very powerful. In the Yanwu continent, who can change the space at will? And who can play with these Yanwu practitioners with mysterious energy in the palm of their hands, and kill them easily? In her previous life, Mu Yang had already reached the peak of the pre-celestial realm. She was only a step away from undergoing the thunder tribulation to refine her body and soul. At that time, she already knew that there was a world above the Yanwu continent that was much more powerful than the one she knew. Gong Qianxue had ruthlessly schemed in every possible way for the sake of being able to call the wind and summon the rain after she ascended to that world. Mu Yang also knew that the people in that world were not ancient martial arts practitioners, but cultivators who had the ability to fly and burrow into the ground. So, the master of this Shen musician inheritance is a cultivator from the upper realm? Chapter 38. A light turns into a sword blade, and like lightning, it flies towards her. Mu Yang wants to dodge, but she can't move faster than the sword blade. There's a sharp pain in her chest, and the fluorescent sword blade suddenly enters her body, disappearing without a trace. A moment later, an intense burning pain spreads from her chest to her limbs and bones. Mu Yang's complexion is as pale as paper, and fine beads of sweat fall from her forehead. When the searing pain was about to melt her bones, she felt as if her bones were about to melt. Mu Yang couldn't bear it any longer. She kneels down on one knee, and a muffled groan of pain comes out of her mouth. But it's only one sound. Afterwards, she clenches her teeth. Even if she bites her lips until they're bloody, she doesn't let out a single moan. What a stubborn little girl. The gentle female voice, with a low sigh and appreciation, echoes in Mu Yang's mind. I actually appreciate your stubbornness. You being able to enter this cave proves that you have the blood of our Shun musician clan in your body, but if you want to control the Tianmo Qin, just having the blood isn't enough. Only a strong enough spirit, and a rich enough bloodline, can make the Tianmo Qin recognize you as its master. If you can't get through this, in order to not expose the existence of the Shun musicians, I can only kill you and the little guy by your side. But I hope that you can succeed. That gentle female voice keeps ringing in Mu Yang's ears, as if to encourage her, and also as if to describe a bright and beautiful future for her. At the same time, the pain in her body is getting more and more intense. At this moment, it's no longer the pain of her bones and flesh, but the tearing and grinding from the depths of her soul. Mu Yang can no longer hold on, and falls to the ground, her body curling up like a shrimp. Her ears are buzzing, as if she can hear the sound of her blood boiling, and the crisp sound of her bones breaking inch by inch. The human body can't bear the pain, and her instincts are urging her to faint. A voice keeps saying in her ear, "Give up, go to sleep. As long as you sleep, you won't be in pain, you won't be tired, and you won't have to bear all kinds of suffering in this world." Mu Yang really feels that she can't hold on any longer. But at this moment, she hears the hoarse cry of a child, Nyang Qin, come back." That voice was filled with a sobbing tone. Her Xiaobao had been so well behaved since she was young. She had a cold expression on her face and didn't like to cry or laugh. Yet, she knew how to take care of her Xiaobao. Her son had never cried like this before. How could she fall asleep? How could he leave Xiaobao alone in this world? Mu Yan abruptly opens her eyes, using the Tianmo Qin to support her body. She slowly climbs up, maintaining a kneeling posture on one knee. The pain did not lessen in the slightest, but Mu Yang's opened eyes became brighter and brighter, as if there was a raging fire burning inside. The fingers on the Tianmo Qin dig into the rotten wood because of the pain. His skin and flesh were pierced, and fresh blood flowed down the wound, winding through the lines on the tattered sleeves of the zither. The gentle woman's voice rings in his ear again. "If you can endure it and obtain the Shun musician's inheritance, you will be able to move unhindered in the three realms." "So noisy," Mu Yang said in a hoarse voice, interrupting the gentle female voice's incessant persuasion. Chapter 39. Blood is clearly flowing from the corners of her lips, and the pain is like a tarsal maggot baring its fangs and brandishing its claws inside her body. But at this moment, Mu Yan is like a high and mighty queen, looking down on everything between heaven and earth, and no one can stop her. "I don't care about the three ranks, I don't care about the inheritance of the Shun musicians. But in this world, if anyone dares to separate me from Xiao Bao, I will destroy the heavens and extinguish the earth, and I will not rest until I die." As she speaks, Mu Yan tilts her head to look at the tattered zither in her hand, and says, "Tianmo Qin, I don't know how glorious you were in the past, but today, either you recognize me as your master, and let me return to my son's side. Or, I will perish together with you." The gentle female voice sighs softly. "That is the Tianmo Qin, it's not something you can threaten." Before she can finish, she abruptly stops. That's because she sees Mu Yan's fingers digging into the sound of the zither. The Tianmo Qin is no longer like a piece of rotten wood. Instead, it's glowing with a red light. As the red light on the zither becomes brighter and brighter, the blood that Mu Yan left on the zither is completely absorbed, and the few remaining strings begin to vibrate violently. The chilling and exciting music rings out, and the surrounding space begins to fluctuate violently. Even the gentle female voice could no longer remain calm. Heavenly demon resonance. She actually triggered the heavenly demon resonance. Even I couldn't do it back then. Just how hot is this woman's blood, and just how strong is her mind? There's a loud bang. The dark space completely collapses, and the red light on the Tianmo Qin also disappears without a trace. Muyan can't hold on any longer, and she's about to fall. But just as she's about to fall, she suddenly hears Xiao Bao's mournful cry, Nyang Qin. Muyan's mind suddenly tightens, and she props herself up to not fall. Instead, she raises her head and opens her eyes. Xiao Bao. Nyang Qin. Xiao Bao can't bear it anymore, and bursts into tears. He throws himself into Muyan's arms, and tightly hugs her, unwilling to let go. The child, who is usually as cold as a little poker face, is now crying like rain, and his little body keeps shaking in her arms. Mu Yang was so distressed that she even completely forgot about the exhaustion and pain all over her body. She hugged her son tightly and comforted him softly. Xiao Bao, don't cry. Look, isn't your mother fine? Mother said that she wouldn't abandon Xiao Bao and that she would be with Xiao Bao forever. Xiao Bao raised his tear-stained little face. His blue eyes were like the washed sky, clear and beautiful. He looked at her without blinking, as if he was afraid that she would suddenly disappear. Mother, are you in pain? Mu Yang shook her head and said with a smile, Nyang Qin doesn't feel any pain. Moreover, I just got a treasure. Saying that, she presents the Tianmo Qin to Xiao Bao like she's presenting a treasure. Just now in the inheritance space, she saw the Tianmo Qin light up with her own eyes, and then turn into a scarlet treasure emitting a bright light. It's clearly just a zither, but the domineering and disdainful pressure it's emitting makes Muyan, who can't help but gasp in surprise, even though she's in severe pain all over her body. Because that zither was too beautiful, and it made people yearn to own it. This is the real Tianmo Qin, the one that can move unhindered in the three realms, the most valuable treasure of heaven and earth that everyone covets. Mu Yang couldn't wait to show the zither to her son and let him hold the treasure and play with it. Chapter 40. That's because the Tianmo Qin that had clearly become incomparably eye-catching in the inheritance space, has now turned into a black piece of rotten wood. Oh, it's still better than rotten wood. In the end, the body of the Qin has become smooth and flat, and the broken strings are automatically connected. And what's very strange is that on the leftmost corner of the Qin, her name is automatically engraved, Jun Muyan. It's just that these three words are very small, and the engraving isn't very clear. If one doesn't look carefully, they wouldn't be able to see it. Now that Muyan is holding this Qin in her hands, others would think that it's an ordinary, unremarkable seven-stringed Qin. They wouldn't show a look of disdain and disgust, treating this Qin as trash. However, Muyan has seen the radiant true appearance of the Tianmo Qin. How could she be reconciled with this, and gloomily says, "What's going on? Wasn't it clearly very beautiful just now? How did it turn into this tattered appearance now?" Xiao Bao sees that his mother is really fine, and her spirit is getting better and better. Even her complexion has become rosy, and he breathes a sigh of relief. He pushes the Tianmo Qin aside, nestles into Muyan's arms, and says in a low, muffled voice, "Xiao Bao only wants Nyang Qin, not the Qin." Muyan immediately hugs her baby son, and says with a smile, "Amen, Nyang Qin only wants Xiao Bao, not the Qin." The Tianmo Qin, the most valuable treasure of heaven and earth, Tianmo Qin, can its new master still be good or not? Cough. The Tianmo Qin hasn't returned to its original state because it was sealed and hasn't been unsealed. Just as Muyan and Xiao Bao are hugging each other, the gentle female voice finally can't help but speak. "Congratulations, you have become the master of the Tianmo Qin, and also the sole successor of my god musicians. I also want to congratulate myself. 1,000 years, I have waited here for 1,000 years, and finally, this day has come. The inheritance of my god musicians will not be completely cut off." Muyan releases Xiao Bao, looks at the empty space, and says with a frown, "Now can you tell me who you are? Moreover, you said that I am the successor of your god musicians. Don't tell me you won't even show your face." As soon as her voice falls, the shadow of a woman slowly appears not far in front of her. The woman was dressed in white. Her appearance was elegant, and her temperament was otherworldly. She looked to be in her early 20s, but her eyes were filled with endless vicissitudes of life. "My name is Bailey Yinlu, a Shun musician, and also the last Zhong musician of the god musicians. The woman's gentle voice slowly asks, "Do you know about Shen musicians?" Mu Yang shook her head. "I've only heard of musicians." "Yes, how do you know about the Shen musicians?" Bailey Yinlu shows a mournful expression. "Isn't this their purpose? They want the world to have no more Shen musicians, and no one to know of the existence of Shen musicians. Otherwise, if those people knew that the inheritance of the Shen musicians was still preserved, I'm afraid they wouldn't even be able to sleep in peace. Are Shen musicians very powerful?" "Hihi, you asked me if Shen musicians are very powerful?" A mocking smile appears on Bailey Yinlu's face. The Shen musicians were once the most powerful existence in the world. However, it was precisely because it was too powerful that it caused others to panic. Therefore, those despicable people joined hands to plot against us and destroyed our entire god musicians. Chapter 41. When Bailey Yinlu said this, 2 lines of tears rolled down from her eyes. There was hatred and unwillingness in her eyes, but more than that, there was longing and loneliness. Mu Yang's frown deepened. She pulled Xiao Bao closer to her bosom. "So you're a ghost now?" "No, I'm just a strand of Bailey Yinlu's spiritual will." She sighs softly. "Back then, I personally promised my people that I would continue the inheritance of the Shen musicians. This is the only wish of all the dead souls of godly musicians. Even if I die, I must complete it. After 1,000 years, I thought I wouldn't be able to wait any longer. I didn't expect that I would finally be able to wait for you." Mu Yang raises an eyebrow and says, "You mean, I am the Shen musician's successor that you have chosen?" "That's right. In the past 1,000 years, you are the only one who has passed the inheritance spaces trial, and finally obtained the Tian Mo Qin's recognition as its master. But why should I accept your inheritance?" Mu Yang said unhurriedly. Bailey Yinlu is stunned. "Do you know how powerful the Shen musicians are? If you obtain the inheritance of the Shen musicians, you will be able to dominate the 3 realms. But, aren't you also the target of public criticism?" Mu Yan sneers. "Receiving your inheritance also means that one day in the future, I will become the target of many experts." Bailey Yinlu sneered. "Are you afraid?" Her expression is full of ridicule, but Mu Yang smiles and admits it without any psychological burden. "Yes, I'm scared. So, please take back your inheritance." As she spoke, Mu Yang glanced at Xiao Bao, and a gentle light appeared in her eyes. For the sake of revenge, she would certainly not hesitate to accept the inheritance of the Shen musician. However, now that she had Xiao Bao, it was impossible for her to put all of her energy into hatred. If he accepted the inheritance and became the target of those unknown and terrifying experts, what would he do if he implicated Xiao Bao? Bailey Yinlu choked on Mu Yang's reply, but when she saw Mu Yang's gaze on Xiao Bao, her heart moved. "Are you afraid of implicating this little fairy by your side, so you're unwilling to accept the inheritance? Then I advise you to accept it." "What do you mean?" Mu Yang raises her eyebrows. "In this Yenwu continent where there is no spiritual energy, an immortal body cannot live past 10 years of age. Even if he goes to the upper realm of the Yenwu continent, he would only be able to struggle at death's door for another 2 or 3 years. Mu Yang's expression abruptly changed. Her gaze towards Bailey Yinlu was no longer lazy and casual, only leaving a cold chill. "Speak clearly. The immortal spiritual body is the purest spiritual body in the world. If he was in the Shoshian continent, his cultivation speed would be 100 times faster than others. But in the Yenwu continent and Shoshan continent where the spiritual energy is heterogeneous and even barren, he will only decline day by day until he dies." Bailey Yinlu stared at Mu Yang's eyes and said word by word, "I don't know how such a pure immortal physique could exist in such a lowly continent, but you should know that I'm not lying, and I don't need to lie to you. Accepting the Shen musician's inheritance and truly controlling the Tian Mo Qin is the fastest way for you to ascend to the Shoshian continent." Mu Yan tightly purses her lips, her hands slightly clenching at her sides. Xiao Bao seemed to feel her nervousness and struggle, so he couldn't help but raise his head and call out softly, "Mother." Chapter 42. Xiao Bao's little face was taut as he slowly nodded, but his eyes were especially bright. As long as Xiao Bao is with Mother, everything is fine. The corners of Muyan's mouth slightly tilts up, her beautiful face once again revealing a languid and leisurely smile. She looked at Bailey Yinlu and said, "I accept the Shun musician inheritance." Bailey Yinlu is stunned once again. "Aren't you going to ask how many secret manuals and treasures there are in the Shun musician inheritance? Don't you want to know who our godly musician's enemies are, or who might be your enemies in the future?" Muyan chuckles, ridicule in her eyes. "I want to ask, but do you still have time to explain it to me?" Bailey Yinlu stares blankly, then she shows a helpless and admiring smile. "Jun Muyan, you're really an astonishingly smart woman. If it's you, maybe you really can succeed. One day, maybe our god musicians will be able to see the light of day again." As she spoke, Bailey Yinlu's figure became more and more faint. The reason why Mu Yang asked this question was because she felt that the inheritance space was becoming more and more unstable, and it was obvious that it was about to collapse. This was also the reason why Bailey Yinlu had been encouraging her and chattering non-stop during her third trial. Because if she doesn't succeed, the Bailey Yinlu will no longer be able to maintain the existence of the space, and the inheritance of the Shun musicians will also be severed. Bailey Yinlu sighs softly. Her voice is filled with relief, reluctance, and expectation. The Tianmo Qin has its own space. The treasures left behind by the god musicians, as well as the notes I left you, are all inside. There is one thing you must remember: the Shun musician's most powerful skill can only be realized through the Tianmo Qin. Therefore, if you want to become a true Shun musician, you must repair the Tianmo Qin. How can the Tianmo Qin be repaired? Space. Map. Coordinates. Bailey Yinlu's voice became more and more indistinct, and the image almost completely disappeared. As for the space that Mu Yang was in, it began to shake violently, as if it could collapse at any moment. Mu Yang picks up Xiao Bao with one hand and grabs the Tianmo Qin with the other. The collapse of space became more and more severe. Everything in the surroundings seemed to have transformed into specks of light, gathering towards Mu Yang's body. Countless scenes appeared in front of Mu Yang's eyes. There was a cave where the sword energy and the sound of the zither were attacking, a dilapidated palace, all kinds of musical instruments. Then she heard the sound of the zither that kept changing its rhythm. All kinds of memories that didn't belong to her appeared in her mind. No, it's not accurate to say that it's a memory. It should be a cultivation method, a skill of a Shun musician. The influx of a large amount of information made Mu Yang's face somewhat pale, and fine beads of sweat seeped out of her forehead. Xiao Bao's heart ached as he looked at his mother's pained expression. He wanted to say something, but he was afraid of disturbing his mother, so he could only gently wipe the sweat from her forehead. He instinctively knows that his mother can't be interrupted right now. After about a quarter of an hour, Mu Yang finally slowly opened his eyes and let out a long breath. At this time, the inheritance space also completely disappeared, and Mu Yang and Xiao Bao appeared in the pitch-black dense fog forest. "Nyang Qin." Xiao Bao cried out in surprise, his little hands tightly hugging Mu Yang's neck, unwilling to let go. Mu Yang kissed Xiao Bao's cheeks and said in a frivolous and joyful voice, "Xiao Bao, we've picked up a treasure this time." Little Treasure tilted his head and revealed a puzzled expression. Chapter 43. This appearance is really too cute. Muyan can't help but kiss him a few more times before saying, "That Aunt Bailey is right, the Shun musician is really a powerful existence that defies the natural order. I can completely understand why those people want to get rid of the Shun musicians. A Shun musician has all the skills that ordinary musicians have. They can confuse people's minds, and they can also calm people's minds. But it also had all sorts of heaven-defying skills that ordinary musicians did not have. For example, the most basic zither sound blade could be used for single or group attacks. If one's cultivation reaches a certain level, in the face of thousands of soldiers and horses, a Shun musician can annihilate them all in an instant with just a zither. Was it scary? But this was far from the scariest part. The sound of a Shun musician's zither can not only attack and treat illnesses, but it can also be used to refine medicine, refine tools, and even accelerate the growth of drafts. According to the inherited memories, the sound of the zither can be incorporated into drafts or alchemy, and it can increase the properties of the medicine by several times. The poison, stimulated by the sound of the zither, scattered all over the sky. When it blended into the air, it could instantly destroy a city. Mu Yang swallows her saliva. For the time being, she doesn't want to search through the memories of other skills. Just this alone was completely beyond her imagination. Xiao Bao listens to Mu Yan's words and says as if it's a matter of course, Nyang Qin is the strongest, the Shun musician is barely worthy of Nyang Qin. Mu Yang is tickled by her own darling's partiality, and her fingers lightly touch the Tian Mo Qin. After receiving the inheritance memories, Mu Yan's mind automatically learns to control the Tian Mo Qin. There's a space inside the Tian Mo Qin, and the Tian Mo Qin that recognizes her as its master will automatically hide inside her body. Just as her slender fingers touch the body of the zither, with a thought, the worn-out zither disappears from Mu Yan's hand. Mu Yan chuckles. Xiao Bao, do you want to go with Nyang Qin to an interesting place to take a look? Xiao Bao hugs Mu Yang's neck and nods expressionlessly, but his eyes are bright. The big and small figures disappeared into the forest. The light in front of them suddenly brightens, and Mu Yang discovers that she and Xiao Bao have appeared in a huge world. Mu Yang never knew that such a magical thing existed. It was hidden in her body, but when it entered, it was a vast world. There were white clouds in the sky, green plains, and towering palaces. Xiao Bao is also very happy. Although he doesn't run like crazy, his eyes are constantly looking around while holding Mu Yang's hand. Just as Mu Yang was about to bring him to the palace with the words demonic palace, the space suddenly shook slightly. Suddenly, the air fluctuations outside are slightly shaken. Mu Yang frowned and said, Xiao Bao, stay here obediently. Mother will go out and take a look. Although Xiao Bao really wanted to follow his mother, he obediently nodded in the end. What Mu Yang didn't know was that the moment she received the inherited memories, far away in the 9 heavens, in the world where the almighty cultivators lived, someone was startled. It's also because of his arrival that the beasts in the fog forest started to riot, so much so that even Mu Yan's space was affected. Xiao Bao ti Xiao Bao. Xiao Bao, a trembling voice comes from the ground, the wheel of fate rotates, the inheritance of the Shun musician, Zhun Shong, I'm afraid your destined daughter has appeared. The old man kneeling on the ground raised his head and looked at the man not far away. Suddenly, he stands up and walks out the door. The old man says in a trembling voice, Zhun Shong, are you going to pick up the woman of destiny? Pick her up. The man's cold and handsome face shows a mocking smile. Ben Jun has never believed in destiny. Since he doesn't believe it, then he will naturally kill him. Chapter 44. As soon as Mu Yan comes out of the space, she hears a huge tremor coming from the ground. Mixed in with it are the terrifying roars of beasts and the shrill screams of humans. What's going on? Are all the strange beasts in the fog forest rioting? But why? Suddenly, Mu Yan feels something soft and warm at her feet. She looks down and finds that the white-furred rabbit has woken up. It's rubbing against her feet, its round, pale red eyes are hidden under the white fur, and she can't see its emotions clearly. But the warm body sticking to her feet seems to be trembling. Scared? Mu Yan asks softly. The rabbit can't help but stick closer to her, and its body trembles even more. The corner of Mu Yan's mouth hooks up into a faint smile. She grabs the rabbit and throws it into the space. This is her son's pet and playmate, how can she casually let it die or be lost? As soon as she throws the rabbit in, the ground under her feet trembles even more violently. The roars of beasts and the huge tremors are getting closer and closer to her. Mu Yan frowns, grabs the hanging vines on the edge of the cliff, and nimbly climbs up. Following her mysterious energy, Mu Yan climbs to the top of the cliff after a few short breaths. Although the fog is still thick, she can still see the strange beasts frantically fleeing in all directions from her vantage point. There are also the humans who ran into the fog forest to look for treasures, but have now become the mud under the feet of the strange beasts. Suddenly, Mu Yan's face changes, and she turns around. She sees a pack of giant red-tailed wolves, half the height of a person, slowly appear behind her. 3, 5, 10, 100. In just a short moment, there are already hundreds of red-tailed wolves on the hilltop where Mu Yan is. Her expression is dignified, and she takes a step back. Squeaking sounds come from the bottom of the cliff. She turns to look and sees that the cliff she had just climbed up has already been covered by a dense pack of giant rodents. Muyan now has no way out, and there are pursuers behind her. But in this kind of desperate situation, the corner of Mu Yang's mouth hooked up into a faint smile, and his pair of eyes became even more romantic and charming. The next moment, Yu turns her wrist, and a grey and unremarkable zither appears in her hand. Her slender hands plucked the strings of the zither, and the sound of the zither was elegant and pleasant to listen to, lingering in the air. The exotic beast that was slowly approaching suddenly stopped in its tracks. The smile on Mu Yang's face deepens. Surrounded by enemies, at this moment when she had nowhere to go, she actually lifted the hem of her clothes and sat down in a carefree manner. "Awoo, awoo, awoo." The alpha wolf howled, its eyes turning red as it took the lead and pounced forward. Mu Yang's fingers curl up and move slightly. Clang! The red-tailed wolf in the air let out a mournful howl. A large hole had been pierced through its stomach, and blood splashed everywhere. The stench of blood in the air instantly triggered the ferocity of the exotic beasts. The red-tailed wolves and rodent rats let out bestial howls as they rushed forward, attacking Muyan. The corners of Mu Yang's eyes twitch, and the movements of her hands moving the strings suddenly quickens. Gong, shong, jiao, zheng, and yu. 5 different musical scales were arranged and combined, transforming into a murderous musical note that flowed out from her hands. Every note represented the activation of a wind blade. The mysterious energy contained in the wind blade could instantly kill a powerful red-tailed wolf. This is the Tianmo Qin's most basic area of effect skill, zither sound blade. Chapter 45. This is the highest mountain in the fog forest. Above the mountain, in addition to the thick fog and cold, there's also the suffocating miasma. Ordinary humans, even pre-celestial powerhouses, don't dare to casually set foot in this area. But at this very moment, there are 2 figures standing on the summit, their expressions indifferent, like they're taking a leisurely stroll in a courtyard. Jun Shong, it seems that the strange beast's rampage alone won't be able to pose a threat to her. Han Yi glances at the handsome man beside him and cautiously asks, "Do you need this subordinate to make a move?" But when he looks, Han Yi stares blankly. Because he's never seen this kind of expression on his Jun Shong's face. Those pair of eyes that are always cold and disdainful, those that don't put anything in the world in their eyes, now seem to light up with 2 raging flames. The gaze that's staring at the jungle below is so focused and blazing, like a beast that has found its favorite prey. Han Yi is somewhat dumbfounded. Is Jun Shong looking at the Shun musicianaire? Was she his fated daughter? But this look in his eyes, it doesn't seem like a burden to be killed. Just as he's about to speak, the zither music below suddenly stops. Han Yi looks down and sees the woman in white sitting on the top of the cliff, surrounded by the corpses of wolves and rats. The cold wind whistles through the forest on a cold night, like a ghost's wail. Her snow-white clothes are splattered with scarlet, appearing strange and bloody. But when the woman raises her head, revealing her languid and gorgeous face, even with Han Yi's temperament of seeing beautiful women, he suddenly holds his breath, unable to conceal the amazement in his eyes. This woman, this is Jun Shong's destined woman. It's not that there aren't any women more beautiful than her in this world, but Han Yi has never seen a woman with such a temperament that could be as captivating as she is. Suddenly, the woman below gently plucks the strings of the zither, the corners of her lips, which appear pale due to excessive use of mysterious energy, gently hooks up. A sweet-sounding voice comes through the thick fog along with the sound of the zither. Your distinguished self has come from afar, causing the beast's rampage in the fog forest, yet you're watching the fire from the other side, not even showing your face. Isn't that too unkind? Han Yi sucks in a breath of cold air. Jun Shong, she's found us. But a woman from the mortal world, who doesn't even have the slightest bit of spiritual power, can actually discover their existence. How was this possible? However, before Han Yi could figure it out, the man beside him has already disappeared in a flash. Han Yi abruptly comes back to his senses, and finds that his Jun Shong has already arrived in front of the woman in white. He promptly follows after her. Mu Yang looks up at the man who has suddenly appeared. The man's handsome face could make any woman in the world intoxicated and infatuated, especially those eyes. When they look down at her, the blue light flickers, making Muyan's heart skip a beat. It was the same dark blue as Xiao Bao's. But very quickly, the strange look in Mu Yang's eyes completely disappeared, and his brows slightly raised. Who exactly are you? What are you trying to do by causing these exotic beasts to rampage? The man lowered his head and looked at her deeply. The fire in his eyes danced as if he was looking at his prey. Mu Yang feels a trace of displeasure at being coveted and controlled. Just as she is about to speak, the man suddenly reaches out and grabs her chin. While Mu Yang is stunned, the man slowly bends down and lowers his head. His cold lips fall on Mu Yang's warm and soft lips. Chapter 46. A deep magnetic voice, mixed with a hint of huskiness, echoes in her ears. You are mine. Mu Yang's eyes widen, her whole body stiffening. Han Yi, who's following right after, staggers, almost falling straight down from the cliff. Wait a minute. What is Jun Shong doing? He's kissing the destined woman? And he's even using the power of the oath. Wait. My Jun Shong Daren. Didn't we come to kill? Who was it that said that the destined woman was troublesome, and that killing her would be good? Did he remember wrongly, or did Jun Shong Daren lose his memory? The man slowly straightens up, looking at the dazed girl below him. A soft smile flashes through his eyes. His fingers gently stroke the Tian Mo Chin below, and his fingertips touch the faint, almost invisible engraving of the name. As if making an oath, the man says it again, Jun Muyan, mine. Mu Yang suddenly wakes up. Thinking of what just happened, she immediately flares up in anger. She raises her hand, wanting to ruthlessly slap him, but the moment she swings her hand, the figure in front of her disappears like an illusion. The top of the cliff is still cold and rustling, and corpses are everywhere, as if nothing has changed. However, there was still a different feeling left on his lips. Was everything that happened just now just her illusion? Just as Mu Yang is stunned, a figure suddenly flashes in front of her. Xiao Bao suddenly pounces into her arms, his little raised face taut. His sapphire-like eyes have a thick "I'm not happy" written all over them. Baby, what's wrong? Mu Yang quickly asks. Xiao Bao rubs against Mu Yang's chest, then he holds her face and kisses her on both cheeks. The ice-cold little milk voice loudly swears, Nyang Qin, mine. Mu Yang. After that strange man who took advantage of her disappears, Mu Yang throws this person to the back of her mind and leads Xiao Bao back into the space. As soon as they enter the space, they see the white-haired rabbit lying on its back on the grass, sleeping soundly. That sleeping posture is completely unlike that of a rabbit, but more like a person. And looking at how the rabbit sleeps sweetly, occasionally nibbling on the grass on its side, it should be very satisfied with the environment in the space. The area of the space was really very large, especially this large lawn. Mu Yang felt that it could raise a large group of horses. Holding Xiaobao's hand, he walked into the palace with the words Demonic Palace written on it. Mu Yan discovers that this place is not so much a palace, but rather a treasury. The palace was ring-shaped and stood tall. Looking up, he saw bookshelves made of mahogany. Unfortunately, these bookshelves were all empty, with only a few tattered old books scattered around. On the other hand, the floor of the palace was littered with books that had been flipped open. There were even a few books that had their pages torn off and thrown everywhere. Mu Yang looked at the ridiculously tall bookshelves around her, and was somewhat speechless. Fortunately, there weren't many books on them, otherwise, it would be a problem for her to take them down. Mother! Xiao Bao called out softly, his handsome little face expressionless. What are we going to do? Chapter 47. Mu Yan's attitude towards her son has always been one of equal respect. She would never treat him as a child, hiding everything from him and letting him go play by himself. Although Xiao Bao is only 4 years old, he is talented and intelligent. Under Mu Yan's guidance, he has already recognized most of the characters. Sure enough, Xiao Bao hears Mu Yan's words and immediately nods. Xiao Bao will help Nyang Qin. His little face was still as cold as ever, but his ice blue eyes were sparkling, making him look exceptionally adorable. Thus, Muyan and Xiao Bao begin to sort out the books while looking for a way to repair the Tian Mo Qin. Most of the books here were miscellaneous records that were of little use. There are also some that introduce refining and alchemy, but Muyan has never heard of the elixirs mentioned in them. She doesn't look at them carefully. She flips through them and finds no information about maps or repairing the Tian Mo Qin, so she puts them back on the shelf. On the side, Xiao Bao's little face is taut as he earnestly flips through the books one by one. After flipping through one, he originally wants to look for another, but he finds a corner of a book faintly peeking out from under the shelf. Xiao Bao thinks for a moment, then he sticks out his little butt and pulls the book out. That corner is actually a blind spot. Even if others deliberately look for it, they might not be able to find it. Muyan is completely unaware of this until she hears her son's low cry of surprise. "Baby, what's wrong?" Muyan thinks that Xiao Bao has encountered some danger and quickly looks over. She sees Xiao Bao looking up, his handsome little face full of confusion. "Nyang Qin, Xiao Bao can't understand what's written in this book. What is a TV? What is a plane? What is time travel?" Muyan stares blankly and promptly takes the book from Xiao Bao's hands. After reading this book, even though Muyan has lived 2 lives, she can't help but sigh in her heart. No wonder the Shun musician clan is so powerful. That's because the founder of the Shun musicians, Bailey Liuyin, was like her, a person who lived 2 lives. Only, she was reborn, while Bailey Liuyin was a soul from another world, reincarnating in a person's body in this world. What's recorded in this book isn't some profound secret technique, but Bailey Liuyin's notes. It mentioned some unimaginable things in the 21st century that Bailey Liuyin lived in, as well as her longing for her hometown. What made Mu Yang the happiest was that there was a map at the end of Bailey Liuyin's notebook. There's a red dot on it, which is the place where Bailey Yinlu said she could find the way to repair the Tian Mo Qin. Mu Yang puts away Bailey Liuyin's notebook and places it on the bookshelf. She then picks up her son and kisses him on the cheek. "Thank you, Xiao Bao. You found what Nyang Qin wanted. You really are Nyang Qin's little lucky star." An imperceptible smile appeared on Xiao Bao's face. Then, as if she had thought of something, her brows furrowed slightly. Hugging Muyan's neck, he kisses her on the cheek. "Xiao Bao can help Nyang Qin. Mother, mine." As soon as he said that, Mu Yang thought of that bastard who took advantage of her, and the roots of her teeth itched. But when he saw his son's cute jealous look, he couldn't help but laugh. Yes, mother is Little Treasure's, and Little Treasure is also mother's. Okay. Above the 9th heaven, the Shoshen continent. My lord, you're back. Chapter 48. Above the 9th heaven, Shoshen continent. Jun Shong, you're back. As soon as the tall man enters, the people in the hall kneel on the ground. The old man raises his head and opens his mouth, wanting to ask something. But before he could speak, the man quickly leaves, leaving them with only a tall and proud back view. Han Yi, who comes in after them, is still in a trance, his footsteps unsteady. He feels that right now, he really needs space to calm down, to properly sort out what just happened. However, before he could disappear, he's surrounded by a group of people. The old man nervously says, "Han Yi, how did it go? Did Jun Shong really kill the Woman of Destiny? Did Jun Shong receive any backlash from killing the Woman of Destiny?" Another person anxiously says. Han Yi looks absent-minded as he looks at everyone, shaking his head. "No backlash." The old man and everyone else lets out a sigh of relief. Who would have thought that Han Yi's complexion would turn green and white? After a long while, he squeezes out 4 words with a constipated expression. "Jun Shong didn't kill her. Not only did he not kill her, but he also directly molested the Woman of Destiny. After molesting her, he hurriedly ran away. When his soul returned to his original body just now, he saw that Jun Shong's ears had turned red. Although his face is still taut, the cold air emitting from his body hasn't diminished in the slightest. But he swears that he really saw Jun Shong's ears turn red. Didn't kill the Woman of Destiny? The old man reveals a shocked expression. Is there someone in this world that Jun Shong can't kill? How is that possible? Quickly tell me, what's going on? Han Yi's brain is a mess. He opens his mouth several times, wanting to tell the truth, but he still swallows it back. Because he feels that if he were to talk about what he saw, this group of people would definitely think that there's something wrong with his brain, or that he's just joking. Their Junshong is indifferent, cold, and callous. The women of the Shoshen continent must think that he has a heart of stone, but there are still women who want to throw themselves into his embrace. How could he do such a frivolous thing? Unfortunately, their Junshong's thoughts are never shown on his face. How can he guess what Junshong really means? He also wants someone to tell him what it means, okay? Just as Han Yi is going crazy, the tall figure that just left suddenly reappears in the hall. Junshong. Everyone knelt down. The old man asked, "May I ask what Junshong wants me to do?" The man frowned slightly, his expression ice-cold, his voice powerful and resonant. "Pass down the order, completely erase the news of the Shun musician's reappearance. Whether it's the Shoshen continent or the Shoshen continent, I don't want anyone to know that the successor of the Shun musicians has appeared." The old man was startled. "Junshong? Do you understand?" "Ming, understand." The old man was frightened by the man's sharp eyes and quickly responded. His heart was filled with doubts. What was going on? Didn't we agree to kill the successor of the Shun musician, the woman of destiny who will bring trouble to Junshong? How did it become a matter of erasing the news of the Shun musician's appearance? Junshong this, what exactly is he trying to do? Inside the space, Mu Yang briefly combed through the Shun musician's inherited memories, and then left the space with Xiao Bao. Because there were many strange beasts in the fog forest, the profound energy fluctuations were also extremely unstable. If Mu Yang also stayed in the space, she would be affected, causing the space to become unstable. Chapter 49. Where else could there be more drafts than in the fog forest? Mu Yang holds Xiao Bao's hand as they leisurely stroll through the fog forest. She doesn't know if it's because of Xiao Bao's heaven-defying luck, but in just half a day, Mu Yang has gathered a lot of rare and precious drafts. Mu Yan is so happy that she hugs her precious son and kisses him several times. Just as he was about to put his son down, a loud bang came from behind him. The mother and son turned around at the same time and saw a bloody person falling from the cliff not far away. An indistinct voice came from above the high cliff. "There's no need to chase after him. If he falls from here, he definitely won't survive." Haha, actually, there's nothing to chase after. In this misty forest, even if he wants to find reinforcements, he has to be able to find them first. Let's go. Mu Yang narrowed his eyes, pulled Xiao Bao along and walked in front of the man whose entire body was dripping with blood. Rather than calling it a person, it would be more accurate to call it a corpse, the kind that probably had one last breath left. However, when Mu Yang saw that most of the man was covered in blood, his pupils slightly shrank. This person turns out to be Liu Beiyu's bodyguard captain, a high-rank profound stage. "Mother," Xiao Bao called out in a low voice. He looked towards Mu Yang, clearly recognizing the guard captain. Mu Yang puts her son aside and gently touches his head. Then, she takes out her silver needles and pierces them into the guard captain's acupoints. This guard captain's life force had been completely severed, and all the meridians in his body had been shattered. It was impossible to save him. But when Mu Yan's needle goes in, he slowly opens his eyes. A pair of blood-stained eyes, after a moment of confusion, reflects Mu Yan's appearance. That pair of dim eyes suddenly burst with dazzling light. "Miss Mu Yan, I beg you, save the third prince, save, he is Gong." Gong Qian Teng, Mu Yan's last breath is finally exhausted, and the guard captain closes his eyes and passes away. He should have been in extreme pain before he died, but at this moment, his blood-stained face revealed an expression of relief. It's as if he's certain that as long as he finds Mu Yan, His Highness will be saved. Mu Yang frowns, a cold light flashing in her eyes. Not only was it because something had happened to her cheap disciple, but it was also because of the poison in the guard captain's body. Mu Yang recognizes at a glance that it is Jin Hong Men's unique poison, sky poison fantasy sand. "Mother!" Xiao Bao grabbed her hand, a questioning expression on his face. "Are we going to save her?" Mu Yang picks up Xiao Bao, the corners of her mouth curling up. "Yeah, we're going to save your stupid junior brother." Although he's stupid, he's still the disciple that she, Muyan, recognizes. It wasn't something that anyone could touch as they pleased. What's more, the people who touched her disciple were Gong Qianteng and Jin Hongmen. In the depths of the dense fog forest. At this time, Liu Beiyu's shirt has been pulled off and is hanging on a tree. His naked body is already covered with cuts and bruises. Even his initial Earth Realm cultivation aura had almost disappeared without a trace. His face that was covered in blood was filled with numbness and defeat. It was as if he had fallen into despair and didn't want to live anymore. Piak. Another whip landed on his body. The one holding the whip was a tall and thin old man in yellow clothes. Chapter 50. As His Royal Highness Kai Yang Country's third prince, are you really willing to become a waste from now on? Liu Beiyu slowly raises his eyes, his pale cracked lips revealing a sneering smile. Don't say that I don't know where Master is, even if I knew, I wouldn't say it. If you have the ability, then kill me. In any case, Gong Qianting will accompany me in death, so I won't suffer a loss. The old man frowns, about to speak, when suddenly there's a burst of painful moaning from the side. He sees a man lying on a rattan chair, his whole body festering, unable to move. He can't move at all from the waist down, and even his urine and feces have to be cleaned by others. The skin on his body is covered with black pustules, and as the pustules burst, rancid mucus flows all over his body. This person is Gong Qianteng. He was hit in the spine by Xiao Bao, half of his body is paralyzed, and coupled with the poison, his whole body feels like it's being bitten by 10,000 ants. His whole person looks like neither a human nor a ghost. Compared to his previous handsome and elegant demeanor, it's like the difference between heaven and earth, the difference between clouds and mud. Even though the maid serving him at the side is trying her best to endure, she still shows a look of fear and disgust. Ah! Scram! Scram! Slut! You dare to neglect Benwang, I'll kill you. With that, Gong Qianting pulls out the guard's sword and directly beheads the maid. The maid doesn't even have the chance to groan before her head leaves the ground and she breathes her last. Blood splatters all over Gong Qianteng's face. Gong Qianteng becomes even crazier. His crimson eyes fiercely stare at Liu Beiyu, and he hysterically roars, beat him to death. I must make him beg for death but can't. Chop off his hands and feet for me. Ah. The yellow-clothed old man contemptuously looks at Gong Qianteng, but on the surface he respectfully says, Second Prince, rest assured, we are under the orders of the sect master, we will certainly help you vent your anger. Saying that, he looks at Liu Beiyu, the corner of his mouth revealing a vicious smile, falling into our Jin Hongmen's hands. Do you think it's that easy to die? When we cripple the tendons in your arms and legs, and your profound energy is completely corroded by the sky poison mirage sand poison, you will become a cripple, without even the slightest bit of strength to resist. Then, we'll sell you to the dirtiest place in the ghost city, the WN Renku. There, people with soft skin and tender flesh like you are the most popular, regardless of gender. At that time, the people in the cave of 10,000 people will have plenty of ways to make you obedient. Even if Liu Beiyu's heart is already like dead ashes, hearing these words, he fiercely raises his head and roars, You dare? I am the third prince of Kai Yang Country. You can kill me, but you can't humiliate me. Ha, in this world, there is nothing that our Jin Hongmen doesn't dare to do. With that, the sword in the hands of the yellow-clothed old man slashed through the air. Liu Beiyu immediately utters a cry of pain, his legs powerlessly hanging down. His hamstring was crippled. So, are you willing to tell us the whereabouts of the mother and son? The yellow-clothed old man unhurriedly says, If you still don't speak, then it'll be your hand's turn next. At this moment, Liu Beiyu clenches his teeth, refusing to say a word. But in the end, tears of humiliation and despair fall from his eyes. Thinking that he, the dignified third prince, will be reduced to a slave that can be trampled on at will in WN Renku, he really wishes he could die immediately. Chapter 51. The sword in his hand is about to strike for the second time, when suddenly in the distance, there's a melodious and sweet sound of a zither. The sound of the zither is so beautiful, so beautiful that everyone present, including the subordinates of the yellow-clothed old man of Jin Hong Men, as well as Gong Qian-ting's guards and maids, all show an intoxicated expression. The yellow-clothed old man's heart thumps. He feels something is wrong and wants to sober up. But his mind is immediately attracted by the sound of the zither. That long, thin, horse-like face shows an intoxicated expression. When no one is aware, the sound of the zither suddenly changes, from melodious and pleasant to listen to impassioned and austere. Suddenly, a guard picks up a knife and fiercely slashes at his companion. Blood splatters. Kill you! Kill you! An angry roar resounds in the crowd. Everyone's face shows a malevolent and distorted expression, as if they are possessed, recklessly slashing at the people around them. It's not until warm blood splashes on his face that the yellow-clothed old man suddenly comes to his senses. All of you stop. A roar containing heaven-grade mysterious energy comes out. The sound of the zither is interrupted in an instant, and it also makes the crazed people around stop fighting. Everyone's face shows a confused expression, as if they don't know what they just did. The yellow-clothed old man's face is very unsightly. He looks in the direction of the sound and coldly says, "Your Excellency's musical attack is so skillful. Could it be that you are a brilliant disciple of Fanyin Palace? I don't know why you want to oppose my Jin Hong Men." Fanyin Palace is the only sect in Yenwu continent that specializes in musicians. Because the sound attack just now was too powerful, the yellow-clothed old man guesses that it's a disciple of Fanyin Palace. Not far away, the figure of a girl in white slowly walks out of the fog. Her clothes are still stained with blood, her left hand is holding an unremarkable zither, and her right hand is holding a little baby carved from jade. She obviously doesn't have any makeup on, and her clothes are dirty and messy. But when they see the girl's raised face and that charming and moving color, everyone's eyes are unconsciously attracted, and they even forget to breathe for a moment. Mu Yang curls up her lips and faintly smiles. "Aren't you looking for me?" The yellow-clothed old man's pupils suddenly constricted. His gaze moved from Mu Yang's face to Xiao Bao, and dense killing intent flashed in his eyes. Was this the youngest heaven-rank ranker that the sect leader had repeatedly urged them to eliminate? That day, Gong Qianshua's men chased him to the bottom of the cliff, but nothing appeared, not even a drop of blood could be found. Later, she heard that the one who crippled Gong Qianting was a 4 or 5-year-old child. Gong Qianshua immediately thought of the little brat who stole her sacred beast egg. Because she had something to do, Gong Qianshua had to leave immediately. That was why he had instructed the yellow-clothed old man to follow Gong Qianting, saying that he would avenge him, but in fact, his real purpose was to find the mother and son, kill them, and take back the sacred beast egg. Seeing Mu Yang and Xiao Bao, Gong Qianting screams, "Slut, slut! You're the one who did this to me. Hurry up and capture her, as well as that son of a bitch beside her. I must skin that son of a bitch alive." Gong Qianting hasn't finished speaking when Mu Yang gently plucks the zither strings. His mouth suddenly stops in the middle of cursing, and his face fiercely distorts. Immediately after, there's a clatter, and a red object falls out of his mouth, falling to the ground. Chapter 52. Everyone stares at it, only to find that the thing that fell to the ground is actually a tongue. Mu Yanxiu's cold gaze returns from Gong Qianting's face, revealing a leisurely smile, only spitting out 2 words, "too noisy." The yellow-clothed old man's complexion changes, gritting his teeth. "Your Excellency is really vicious and merciless." Mu Yan's fingers pluck the strings again, and the rope binding Lu Beiyu is instantly cut. At Mu Yan's side, Xiao Bao rushes out like lightning. In the blink of an eye, he drags the blooded Lu Beiyu to Mu Yan's side. He also takes out a draft and feeds it to Lu Beiyu. Lu Beiyu vaguely opens his eyes, seeing Mu Yan and Xiao Bao's figures. His eyes can't help but redden, choking with sobs. "Master, little brother, kill me, then run. I don't want to live as a cripple and be humiliated, and I don't want to implicate you. They are people from Jin Hong Men, a famous assassin organization in Yenwu continent. I don't want to implicate you." Bang! Xiao Bao punches him, knocking him unconscious. His cold little face impatiently spits out 2 words, "too noisy." Mu Yan chuckles, looking at the yellow-clothed old man, unhurriedly saying, When it comes to being vicious and merciless, how many people would dare to compare with Jin Hong men? If there's a little dissatisfaction, you'll exterminate an entire family. Haven't you done it many times over the years? The yellow-clothed old man proudly smiles. It's good that you know, offending our Jin Hong men won't end well. Mu Yan hands the zither to Xiao Bao, picks up a sword from the ground, and smiles brightly. Just in time, this is also what I wanted to say. Offending me won't end well. Although the person in front of him has a child, she looks no more than 17 or 18 years old. In the eyes of the yellow-clothed old man, she's just a silly little girl. If Mu Yan were to use the zither, he might still be afraid. But this girl wants to defeat him with a sword. Hehe, simply a joke. An insignificant little girl dares to threaten this old man. You should know that this old man's cultivation has already reached high heaven stage. You have to pay the price for not knowing the immensity of heaven and earth. After a short time to drink a cup of tea. The yellow-clothed old man looks at the sword pointed at his neck, trembling all over, his eyes filled with disbelief. Impossible, this is impossible. Xiantian. How could you be a Xiantian warrior? Who would believe that a teenage girl was a Xiantian realm martial artist? Who could believe it? How many pre-celestial practitioners are there in total in the Yanwu continent? Which one of them wasn't in their 70s or 80s, or even over 100 years old? Gong Qianxue, a 22-year-old heaven-grade martial artist, was already enough to shock the world, but what if the name of this 18-year-old pre-celestial martial artist was spread? The old man's body shivers. He glances at the corpses of his men lying on the ground and tries his best to maintain his composure. Our Jin Hong men is an assassin organization. We have always taken people's money to eliminate disasters. If Miss is willing to show mercy to me, Jin Hong men will certainly repay Mrs. kindness in the future. Oh! Mu Yang curled up the corner of her lips, and said with a smile that was not a smile, so you're saying, you want to betray your employer and surrender to me? Yes, yes. But what if your employer doesn't agree? Mu Yang glances at the panic-stricken Gong Qianting sitting on the rattan chair. Chapter 53. Mu Yang's eyes reveal a look of interest. She withdraws the sword in her hand and crosses her arms over her chest as she looks at the yellow-clothed old man. The yellow-clothed old man grits his teeth and walks towards Gong Qianting with his sword. Woo, woo woo woo. Gong Qianting desperately wants to retreat, but his body can't move at all. Finally, the yellow-clothed old man's sword pierces Gong Qianting's heart. Afterwards, he doesn't stop moving. In just a few seconds, he has killed all of Gong Qianting's guards and maids. Wiping away the blood that splashed on his face, the yellow-clothed old man bows slightly and says with a humble face, "Like this girl should believe my sincerity. You can believe me, as long as you cooperate with our Jin Hong men, you will certainly get unexpected benefits." Mu Yang slowly walks to Xiao Bao's side, touches his little head, and chuckles. Worthy of being a member of Jin Hong men, you could even kill your own sect master's elder brother so cleanly and efficiently. What? The yellow-clothed old man's complexion greatly changes. Just as he is about to say something, a sword suddenly comes flying towards him. He abruptly widens his eyes, wanting to dodge, but this sword that contains a powerful mysterious energy flies in front of him like lightning, leaving him with no room to dodge. With a poochie sound, the sword pierces his neck, piercing through and firmly nailing itself to the trunk of a tree. Even as he dies, the old man's eyes are wide open, unable to react to what happened. Mu Yang puts the Tianmo Qin and the unconscious Lu Beiyu into the space. She picks up Xiao Bao and floats away, her figure slowly disappearing into the thick fog. Only the woman's melodious voice echoes faintly in this bloody world, accompanied by the rustling of leaves. Cooperate with Jin Hong men? Heh. Jin Hong men will soon disappear from this world. What's there to cooperate with? Above the ninth heaven, Shouxian continent. Han Yi has been very bitter these past few days, because he has shared the shocking scene he saw in the Yanwu continent with everyone, but none of his companions believe him. Elder Chang. Han Yi turns around and sees the old man standing silently behind him with a beautiful pink-clothed girl. His bitter face suddenly turns into astonishment. You, why are you here? Elder Chang ignores him and walks towards Jun Shong's room with the pink-clothed girl. Wait a minute, Elder Chang, what are you doing? Don't you know that women are forbidden from entering Junshong's palace? Elder Chang glanced at him and said, weren't you the one who told me that Junshong wanted a woman? Since you want women, we naturally have to share Junshong's worries. How can we let Junshong be stifled? Saying that, she doesn't wait for Han Yi's reaction. She leads the bashful and secretly delighted young girl to push open the palace doors and walk inside. Han Yi is immediately thrown into disarray by the wind. When did I ever say that Junshong had started eating meat? Hey! At best, Junshong only kissed her on the lips, he didn't even hold her little hand. How could he have started eating meat? However, the palace gate had already slowly closed in front of him. Han Yi swallows and says, thinking to himself, could it be that Junshong has really been enlightened? But at this moment, there was a sudden bang. The entire thick and heavy palace gate shattered into two halves and collapsed. Elder Chang and the girl in pink were kicked out along with the door. The girl in pink, who was still dressed up alluringly when she first entered, was now charred all over and looked battered. Chapter 54. Elder Chang shudders as he climbs up from the ground, glaring fiercely at Han Yi. This is what you said about Junshong having thinking of a woman? Han Yi, when did I say that? Hearing the noise, everyone also gathers around. Seeing the pink-clothed girl who has fainted on the ground in embarrassment, they all reveal expressions of schadenfreude. Junshong is still so heartless and callous, with a heart of stone. That's right, Han Yi, you still want to lie to us and say that Junshong has fallen in love with the woman of destiny. It's good enough that Junshong doesn't directly kill the woman of destiny. As they speak, a tall figure slowly walks out from the palace gate. Greetings to Junshong. Everyone respectfully kneels on the ground. But the man seems to not see them at all, walking straight towards the direction of the Qiankuan mirror. Han Yi's heart thumps. Junshong, you're going to the lower realm? A cold word responds to him. Elder Chang can't help but ask, what are you going to do, Junshong? Why is he going to the Yanwu continent again? The man turns his head and coldly glances at everyone, spitting out two words in an icy tone, propose. Bang bang bang. This is the sound of everyone's voices. Han Yi hurriedly gets up and follows behind the man. He looks back at Elder Chang and his companions, the corner of his mouth hooking up into a mocking smile. A bunch of stupid mortals. Lousy told you, but you didn't believe it. Now you believe it. Junshong is going to propose. Wait a minute. Propose? Junshong is going to propose to the woman of destiny? The dim candle flame swings in the dark night. In the candlelight, a slim and graceful figure is sitting by the window, looking down and reading something. Her jet-black long hair hung loosely from her temples and swayed gently with the breeze. It set off her snow-white complexion, dense and long eyelashes, and light-colored thin lips. She was like a meaningful, tranquil, and beautiful ancient painting. Liu Beiyu wakes up from the severe pain all over his body. He opens his eyes in a daze and sees such a breathtaking scene. The memories from before he fainted slowly came back to him. That feeling of oppression, suffocation, hatred, and despair instantly surged into his mind. He remembered watching his subordinates being killed one by Gong Qianting and the people of Jin Hong Men. He remembered that he was hung up, his cultivation was slowly destroyed by poison, his tendons were cut off. There was also the melodious sound of the zither at the end, as well as the familiar sound that rang in his ears. The rims of Liu Beiyu's eyes slightly redden. He moves his lips and spits out two hoarse words, Master. He had never thought that the person who would come to save him in his most desperate moment would actually be the master he had just casually acknowledged. When Mu Yang heard his voice, she closed Bailey Liuin's notebook and turned around to walk over. How do you feel now? The woman's voice was clear, gentle, and calm. Liu Beiyu's originally bitter and painful heart slowly calms down. He originally thought that after returning to Kaiyang country, he would find a way to repay his master. But now, he had become a cripple. The only thing he could do was not to burden his master. Chapter 55. Hearing this, Mu Yang raises her eyebrows. She taps the book in her hand and says with a smile that isn't a smile, "Oh, so you don't need to help restore your cultivation and connect the tendons and veins in your legs? I've studied it for so long in vain. Well then, since you don't want to be treated, I'll send you." Wait a minute. Lu Beiyu snaps his eyes wide, saying in disbelief, "Master, what did you just say?" Mu Yang chuckles, "I didn't say anything." "No, Master, you said it. You said that you can restore my cultivation and connect the tendons and veins in my legs, right?" Lu Beiyu struggles to get up from the bed, his voice so excited that it's about to turn into a scream. There was originally no hope, so it's one thing to throw away the broken jar. But now, he sees hope in a hopeless situation. How could he calm down? Mu Yang is about to answer when the door to the room is pushed open. Xiao Bao's short and small body walks in, his handsome little face is cold and expressionless. He's carrying a food box that's half as tall as him, but he doesn't seem to feel the weight and burden at all. He easily walks to Mu Yang's side and looks up. "Nyangqin, it's time to eat." "Ien," Xiao Bao is so obedient. Mu Yang lowers her head and kisses her son's cheek. She takes out the food from the food box and places it on the table. Xiao Bao automatically sits at the table next to Mu Yang. He picks out the dishes that Mu Yang likes, and says with a taut face, "Nyangqin, eat slowly." Even Lu Beiyu, who's full of hope, expectation, anxiety, and apprehension, can't help but be dumbfounded when he sees this scene. "Hey, wait a minute, you mother and son are playing the wrong roles, right? Shouldn't Mu Yang be the one taking care of Xiao Bao's daily life, preparing his meals, and giving him his favorite dishes to eat? But why is it that everything has been reversed now? Xiao Bao is a 4-year-old child, yet he's taking care of his master meticulously and perfectly. What's going on here? Mars. Master, little brother, you." Lu Beiyu swallows his saliva, opening his mouth dryly. Mu Yang eats heartily as she says, "Xiao Bao, your brother hasn't eaten yet, prepare a portion for him." With an expressionless face, Xiao Bao randomly picks a few dishes, brings a bowl of rice, and places it in front of Lu Beiyu. She didn't even bother to say, "Go ahead and eat." She just left him with a cold and elegant back view. After returning to his seat, he brings a plate of beef in front of Mu Yan and says in a childish voice, "Nyangqin, eat more." "Oh, Xiao Bao should eat more too." Mu Yang gave her son a bright smile. Lu Beiyu is simply speechless. "Master, little senior brother, isn't this difference in treatment too big?" "Master, you said that you can cure me, is that true?" Mu Yang takes a sip of her after-dinner tea and holds her son's soft and fragrant body in her arms. She says contentedly, "What's wrong? You don't believe me?" No, I believe you, I believe you. I believe whatever Master says." Mu Yang puts down the teacup and opens her mouth again. However, there is a problem. What problem? Lu Beiyu's heart was suddenly lifted. The process might be a little painful. Lu Beiyu's hand that's supporting his body softens, and he falls on the bed with a thump. "Master, please don't tease this disciple anymore. I'm not even afraid of death. Why would I be afraid of pain?" Chapter 56. My good disciple, since you have this kind of awareness, then it couldn't be better. I, your master, was worried that I wouldn't have a place to practice. Hearing his words, Muyan's face finally shows a bright, beautiful, and satisfied smile, making her look even more beautiful and charming, bewitching people's minds. But Lu Beiyu doesn't know why, but when he sees her little face, he shudders. A bad premonition faintly rises in his heart. In fact, Lu Beiyu's sky poison fantasy sand isn't difficult to cure, and Muyan doesn't need to integrate the Shen musician's skills. Just relying on her original attainments in medical skills, she could slowly remove the poison from Lu Beiyu's dantian in a few months' time. It's just that the process would be painful and long. The troublesome part is Lu Beiyu's severed hamstring. In the Shen musician's inherited memory, there is indeed a miraculous medical skill that can reconnect the tendons and veins, and even bring the dead back to life. But the conditions to achieve it are very harsh, and it requires the use of spiritual energy to activate the Tianmo Qin. Right now, Muyan only has internal force in her body. What is spiritual energy? She has never even heard of it, let alone using it. However, there's no such thing in the Shun musician's inherited memory, but Muyan found some relevant information in Bailey Liuyan's notes. That's the 21st century where Bailey Liuyan lived, that strange time and space, a kind of unimaginable medical treatment plan. Surgery. Liu Beiyu lies on the bed, full of apprehension, looking in Muyan's direction. She was fiddling with a strange-shaped knife, which she had found in the space, and was engrossed in reading a book. Liu Beiyu can't help but ask, "Master, what are you looking at?" "Oh, looking at the operating procedure." What operating procedure?" Liu Beiyu's face pales, the bad premonition in his heart intensifying. Muyan raises her head, a bright and beautiful smile appearing on her beautiful little face. "Master has never done this operation before, so I'm not very familiar with the operating procedure. So before the operation, I intend to consolidate the operating procedure. But you don't have to worry, Master has just tested it on a chicken leg. I believe there shouldn't be any problems." Consolidate the operating procedure before the operation? She's even tested it on a chicken leg? Liu Beiyu's eyes go dark, and he says excitedly, Master, your disciple is a person, not a chicken leg. You must take it easy, this disciple only has this pair." Bang! Xiao Bao punches down, and Liu Beiyu is immediately silenced. Expressionlessly, he raised his exquisite little face and spat out 2 words, "too noisy." Mu Yang smiles and nods, her eyes full of praise. Xiao Bao did the right thing. This way, Nyang Qin doesn't even have to anesthetize him. As she spoke, she kissed her precious son's face heavily. Little Treasure's eyebrows slightly curved, and his deep blue eyes were suffused with a luster as beautiful as the sky. An hour later, Liu Beiyu wakes up from the pain in his feet. He cried out in pain, and when he tried to move his legs, the pain made him bounce on the bed. But very quickly, the pain on his face was replaced by ecstasy. "Master, my feet, I can feel my feet again." Did this mean that he wouldn't become a cripple again? Chapter 57. Liu Beiyu listens to Mu Yang's words, waking up from his surprise and excitement. "Master, are you leaving?" Mu Yan nods, her light eyes are leisurely and carefree. All good things must come to an end in this world. "But you killed the people of Jin Hong Men for me. They are very powerful in Kaiyang country and Jing Cheng country. If the people of Jin Hong Men find you, they will definitely retaliate. Master, why don't you come back to Kaiyang Imperial Palace with me? I will definitely protect you." Mu Yang chuckles, "Who said I killed them for you?" Liu Beiyu stares blankly. But he hears the clear and pleasant voice continue, "Regardless of whether I have you or not, I will not let the people of Jin Hong Men go. Then, foolish disciple, we'll meet again someday. Xiao Bao, let's go." Xiao Bao immediately obediently stretches out his white and tender little hand, letting Mu Yang hold it. The mother and son no longer pay attention to the stunned and shocked Liu Beiyu, and float away. Without waiting for Liu Beiyu to ask again, his figure has already completely disappeared outside the door. Xiao Bao raises his head and looks at Mu Yang. He always feels that his mother's expression is a bit strange at the moment. That beautiful face still carries a charming and lazy smile, but there's a touch of dense coldness in those clear peach blossom eyes. "Nyang Qin, where are we going?" Xiao Bao can't help but ask. Mu Yang lowers her head and smiles sweetly at her son. "Nyang Qin is going to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. Night has just fallen, and the sky is dyed with a misty grey. Located at the junction of Kaiyang country and Jing Cheng country, this was originally a deserted suburb. But since 7 or 8 years ago, a tea house called Kwai Hua Lin has been built. Although it's called a tea house, the building covers a very large area. Inside, there are wine and food, beautiful women, gambling and recreational activities. It attracts a lot of martial practitioners who are in a hurry to stop and spend money here. However, no one knows that this place that looks like a gold-squandering den is actually the headquarters of Kaiyang country's #1 assassin organization, Jin Hong Men. Merry Forest is divided into inner and outer layers. The outer layer is the place for guests to indulge in ecstasy, while the inner layer is the place for Jin Hong Men's members to vent their frustrations after completing their tasks. At this time, on a square with a canopy covering the sky and a mat on the ground, dozens of bare-chested men were gathered together, letting out wanton and lewd laughter. In front of them, more than a dozen beautiful girls who had been fed drugs were tearing at their clothes in a daze. "I'm in so much pain. Give me medicine. Give me medicine." The girl cried out in pain. Her clothes were torn to shreds, but her eyes were filled with pain and despair. The assassins of Jin Hong men laugh even more proudly and wildly. "Do you want medicine? Then obediently kneel on the ground and lick our feet. Ha ha ha." The young girls were extremely unwilling, but the effects of the medicine made them feel so much pain that they wished they were dead. Sparkling tears fell from their eyes, but they could only kneel down and crawl over like dogs to lick the feet of those killers. They were humiliated and humiliated like animals. The assassins laughed even louder. This was the favorite pastime of Jin Hong men's men. They would kidnap innocent women and give them the addictive, rambling powder, making them abandon their nature and play with them like dogs. Chapter 58. Ha ha ha. Liu Laro you don't know. There are a few girls here, and they're all daughters of noble families. When they were caught, they behaved like chaste women, but in front of the peripatetic powder, they still turned into this cheap appearance. Saying that, the killer grabbed the girl's chin at his feet and proudly said, "Dog thing, don't you think so?" The girl's face dripped with tears of despair, but she couldn't suppress the moans that overflowed from her mouth that made her want to die of shame. Just then, suddenly, something fell from the sky. Pink petal-like things fell to the ground, falling on the faces and bodies of the killers. What's going on? Is it raining? That's not right, this seems to be petals. But there are no flowering trees around the square, how could there be petals falling? Everyone was surprised, when suddenly the melodious sound of a zither came from the distant horizon. The tinkling sound was like pearls and jade falling on an ice plate, or like a gurgling stream caressing the mountains and rocky streams. The sound of the zither got closer and closer, becoming more and more mellow and moving. From high mountains and flowing water, it slowly turned into a soft and gentle voice. The faces of the killers of Jin Hong men revealed an intoxicated expression, their eyes blurrily looking in the direction of the sound of the zither. Petals sprinkled down, falling faster and faster, more and more, almost covering every part of the killers' bodies. Suddenly, someone saw a snow-white figure gracefully descending from the roof among the fluttering petals. The cool breeze billowed the snow-white clothes, setting off the girl's jade-like crystal-clear complexion and gorgeous and elegant facial features, stunning the killers below. Someone slightly opened his mouth, not noticing the drool dripping down from the corner of his mouth. Someone pushed away the ravaged girl in his arms, murmuring, "Beauty, I want this beauty." The girl in white finally landed on the ground, her hair slightly fluttering, the petals scattering, the corners of her mouth holding a slight smile. Like a beautiful fairy from the ninth heaven, suddenly mistakenly descending into the mortal world. Gulp, someone swallowed his saliva, his eyes bulging and faintly reddening. Someone couldn't help but stagger over, his perverted hand reaching out towards the girl's delicate and flawless face. The smile on the white-clothed girl's face deepened, and her jade-like fingers lightly plucked the strings of the zither. With a bang, the assassin closest to the white-clothed girl exploded like fireworks. In an instant, a dazzling red mist of blood bloomed from his body, and he fell straight down. This sudden change instantly woke up the assassins who were engrossed in it. Someone couldn't help but exclaim, "Who are you? How dare you?" The zither strings vibrated, and peng, there was another sound, and the body of the person who spoke exploded again. Just like the previous person, there was not a single part of his body that was unscathed, and in the blink of an eye, he had become a mangled corpse. "You, who exactly are you? Why? How did she kill them?" "It's flower petals. The flower petals stuck to our bodies are special drafts. Hurry, hurry and pull them away." In the square, the killers of Jin Hong men are in a commotion. They scream and want to slap away the pink petals on their bodies. Just a moment ago, they had felt how beautiful these petals were, but now they felt how horrified they were. Chapter 59. Muyan looks at their panicked and frightened appearance. Her line of sight sweeps over the painfully moaning and crying girls on the ground, the corners of her mouth hooking up into a cold smile. Whether it's the previous life or the present, the behavior of these beasts really hasn't changed at all. Don't they like to abuse others so much, letting them experience the despair of being tortured to death? Today, she will definitely fulfill their wish. Her slender, sparkling fingertips leisurely pluck the strings, accompanied by frightened screams and wails. The Tianmo Qin emits a pleasing sound that moves one's heartstrings, just like its master, leisurely enjoying this feast of slaughter. Immersed in her murderous intent, Muyan doesn't notice that in the void, there's a pair of blazing eyes staring at her. In those eyes, there's an unprecedented desire and a domineering determination to win. All his life, he's been disgusted and alienated from women. However, the first time he laid eyes on this woman, his heart couldn't help but throb, and the blood in his whole body is boiling hot. It's as if this woman was born to belong to him. And his originally empty and lonely life is suddenly filled with the appearance of this woman. Jun Muyan, if it's said that when he first saw her, it was only the vibration of his heartstrings, the desire to win. But now, looking at the shower of pink petals, that bewitchingly smiling girl plucking the strings to kill people, the fire and desire in his heart simply burns to the point that he can't restrain and suppress it. Even in that cold and silent body, there's a part that's crazily clamoring, wanting to possess this woman, wanting to fiercely hold her in his arms, wantonly invading. Jun Muyan, you're destined to be mine. A low, husky voice spits out from his thin lips, and his pair of black eyes become even more serene and penetrating. In the innermost luxurious residence of Jin Hong Men, Ji Changming leans against the armchair, holding the information he just received in his hands, slightly frowning. Deputy Head, what's wrong? Waiting on the side, Hall Head Ren sees that Ji Changming's expression is strange, and he can't help but ask. Ji Changming frowns slightly. We've lost contact with the people looking for that Heaven Stage kid. How is that possible? Hall Master Ren exclaimed, even if he's a Heaven rank, he's only a 4 or 5-year-old child. Among the people we sent, there are Heaven rank experts and a few peak-level Earth ranks. Ji Changming impatiently wrinkled the report and said in a low voice, how are Master's injuries? The nominal head of Jin Hong Men is Ji Changming, but in fact, the real master is Gong Qianxue. Everyone in Jin Hong Men, including Ji Changming, is controlled by Gong Qianxue using drafts. Therefore, what Ji Changming and the others feared the most was that they would be severely punished by Gong Qianxue if they didn't do their job well. Hall Master Ren shook his head as a trace of fear flashed across his eyes, because Master has already signed a contract with the Sacred Beast Egg. Once the vital signs of the Sacred Beast Egg disappear, Master will suffer a backlash. This is also the reason why Master is in such a hurry to find that little brat. However, I just received news that the backlash has already begun. Master's injuries are not light, and he is now returning to the Tiandao sect to recuperate. When he thought of the anger and punishment they would have to bear after Gong Qianxue came back and they still hadn't found the child. Ji Changming and Hall Master Ren's faces turned ugly. Hall Master Ren hopefully said, perhaps Master won't be too angry. After all, we've done our best. Chapter 60. He, she won't be angry? Ji Changming revealed a sarcastic smile. That's because you haven't seen the look on her face when she flew into a rage 4 years ago. At that time, she killed quite a few of my trusted subordinates, and even I was seriously injured. Halfway through, Ji Changming cautiously and fearfully swallows the rest of the words back down. His eyes are somewhat deep, as if he had returned to 4 years ago. Gong Qianxue suddenly informed them, asking them to cut out a pregnant woman's fetus and give it to her. At that time, Ji Changming wasn't the nominal head of Jin Hong Men, but he was the main person responsible for that matter. He thought everything should be foolproof. After all, that pregnant girl was so weak, without the slightest bit of resistance. But unexpectedly, in the end, that girl must be dead by now. After all, she was a pregnant woman who didn't even have the strength to truss a chicken. If she wasn't caught by their encirclement, then she must have escaped deep into the mountains. If she went deep into the mountains, she would definitely die. Ji Changming was so absorbed in his thoughts that he didn't even react when Hall Leader Ren said goodbye and left. But suddenly, Hall Leader Ren's exclamation reaches his ears, "Who are you?" As soon as the voice falls, there is a loud bang, and a black shadow smashes straight towards him. Blood flowed around his feet and dyed the ground red. Hall Leader Ren widens his eyes and opens his mouth as if he wants to say something, but blood gurgles out of his throat. In a split second, he tilts his head and completely stops breathing. Ji Changming is shocked and angry. He quickly looks up and sees a girl in snow-white clothes, long hair draping over her shoulders, slowly walking into the room. Her feet are full of Hall Leader Ren's flowing blood, but walking in this bloody place, her whole body is surrounded by an awe-inspiring and inviolable sacred aura. "You, who are you? Why did you trespass into my merry forest, forbidden area?" After Ji Changming's shout, the girl opposite him slowly hooks up her lips. That pure and holy as snow temperament instantly changes, as if from a snow lotus of Tianshan Mountain to a fiery and flirtatious parameter Chumi, charming and dangerous. "I took the liberty to visit in the middle of the night. I hope the head of Jin Hong Men won't take offense." The girl's voice is like ice jade striking each other, sweet and pleasant to listen to. Ji Changming suddenly widens his eyes, incredulously saying, "You, how did you know I am Jin Hong Men? How do I know you're the master of Jin Hong Men?" Muyan chuckles and looks up at him. "Not only do I know that you're the master of Jin Hong Men, but I also know that Jin Hong Men is about to disappear from this world." Being stared at by those eyes that were as cold as snow, Ji Changming inexplicably shuddered. He forced himself to calm down and said, "What do you mean by that?" "The meaning is, today, I will destroy your Jin Hong Men." Ji Changming stared blankly for a moment before bursting into laughter. However, his eyes were burning with rage. "Miss, you sure have a big tone. In this world, there are many people who want to destroy my Jin Hong Men, but no one has ever succeeded. You dare to spout nonsense at such a young age. I would like to see whether you have the ability or not." Before he could finish his words, Ji Changming's attack is already rumbling towards Muyan like a thunderbolt. A powerful and overbearing profound qi emanated from his body. If it was an ordinary person, even if they were standing 10 meters away, they would still tremble under the immense pressure of the profound qi. Ji Changming's eyes were filled with killing intent and confidence. Chapter 61. However, he has full confidence in his own talent and strength. Even Gong Qianxue isn't in his eyes. Gong Qianxue, the #1 genius of the Yanwu continent, is only at the early heaven stage. The girl in front of him looks to be several years younger than Gong Qianxue. How could she be his opponent? Seeing that the palm is already in front of her, Muyan's expression is still calm and unperturbed. Her small jade-like hand slightly lifts, internal force revolves within her body, and she pushes it towards the incoming Ji Changming. With a loud bang, the two people's palms collide. Ji Changming's face shows a proud smile. This woman is stupid, right? She actually dares to directly compete with him in internal force. However, just as the smile overflows the corner of his mouth, it doesn't have time to blossom before it freezes. Ji Changming abruptly retreats several feet away, one hand clutching his chest as he spits out a mouthful of blood. His eyes unwaveringly stare at the girl in front of him, his hoarse voice filled with shock and disbelief. "You're actually a pre-celestial? How is this possible?" "That's right. A teenage girl is actually a pre-celestial expert. How is this possible?" Muyan chuckles, unhurriedly saying, "You're also not bad. After not seeing you for a few years, not only did you become the master of Jin Hong Men, but even your strength has grown to the peak of heaven stage." Listening to her familiar tone, the bewilderment on Ji Changming's face becomes more and more heavy. "Who are you? Why don't you take a guess?" Muyan carelessly smiles. "That's right, by the way, I'll tell Master Ji that I've already cleaned up all the trash outside. Now, the only one left is you. Master Ji, we have a lot of time, we can slowly chat." The girl in front of him speaks lightly, but in Ji Changming's ears, it's like a clap of thunder. "You, what did you say?" he roars, his voice sharp and distorted because of extreme fright. Suddenly, his figure rushes out of the room like lightning, rushing towards the direction of the square. Muyan's expression is quiet, she doesn't have any intention of stopping him. Instead, she calmly follows after him. 1 corpse, 2 corpses, 10 corpses, as more and more corpses appear in front of him, Ji Changming's expression becomes more and more aghast and fearful. His Jinhong men has been cultivated for a full 7 or 8 years. With great difficulty, it became the #1 assassin organization in Kaiyang country. They were all destroyed by this woman in a single night. You evil woman! What enmity does my Jinhong men have with you that you must be so cruel and merciless? Ji Changming abruptly turned his head around, his eyes fiercely glaring at the white-clothed girl who was slowly walking towards him. He let out a beast-like roar. The corners of Muyan's mouth gently hooks up, a charming smile on her dainty face, but her eyes are cold as if they can condense into ice slag. Jinhong men and I have an irreconcilable enmity. Are you flips her wrist and a long sword appears in her hand. Muyan runs her mysterious energy and lightly slashes. Ji Changming's body suddenly split open, and blood splattered everywhere. Ah! Who the hell are you? Ji Changming shouted at the top of his lungs as he dodged and counterattacked. Muyan sneers, Sect Master Ji's memory is really bad. Have you forgotten about me so quickly? As soon as her voice falls, the second sword slashes out, and a bloody hole appears on Ji Changming's shoulder. He lets out a painful wail, his eyes filled with resentment and fear as he glares at Muyan. Chapter 62. Muyan shows a regretful expression and shakes her head. What a pity, Master Ji, you've guessed wrong again. With the third slash, Ji Changming's hand that was about to pull out the dagger at his waist suddenly splashes with blood, and half of his palm is sent flying. A mournful scream pierces the sky. Master Ji's scream is really miserable. Muyan unhurriedly says, then, I'll give you a hint. 4 years ago, Kaiyang country, Nameless Valley. Ji Changming holds his wrist that's missing half of his palm, his whole body convulsing and trembling. The pain makes him unable to concentrate. But hearing Muyan's words, he suddenly raises his head and stares at her face. Suddenly, those blood-stained pupils suddenly contract. Ji Changming opens his mouth wide and lets out a sharp, ear-piercing scream. Jun Muyan, you're Jun Muyan, the pregnant woman 4 years ago. But immediately, he frantically shakes his head and roars hysterically, impossible. How could it be you? Jun Muyan, shouldn't you be dead already? Muyan steps forward step by step on the blood on the ground, her smile is gentle and shallow. If I'm not alive, how can I repay you for your kindness? Ji Changming looks at the girl's flowery smile, at her eyes that are as dark as a bottomless abyss. His body suddenly trembles like a sieve. This time, real fear rises in his heart. He kneels on the ground and keeps retreating on his knees, his mouth uttering a terrified murmur. Don't kill me, Gong Qianxue instigated me that year, it has nothing to do with me. It's not me who wants to dig out your child. As he retreats, Ji Changming's hand touches his lower back. There hides his final weapon, Jinhong men's unique poison, sky poison fantasy sand. It was refined by the Heavenly Road sect's master of alchemy and draft, Jian Feng, and was specially gifted to Gong Qianxue. Even a pre-celestial practitioner can't escape the power of the sky poison fantasy sand. Muyan listens to Ji Changming's pleas for mercy and looks at his hand behind his back. Her eyes narrow and her smile deepens. Seeing that Ji Changming is about to take out the sky poison fantasy sand, a black shadow suddenly flashes between the two. Bang! After a loud bang, Ji Changming's body expanded violently before suddenly exploding. Blood, flesh, and internal organs splattered everywhere. Muyan didn't react for a moment and was almost hit by the flesh and blood. However, a tall and slender figure instantly enveloped her, blocking all the blood that splattered over. A cold and strong masculine aura assaulted her senses, invading all of her senses. Muyan stares blankly. Before she could react, she hears the man's deep and magnetic voice. Jun Muyan, it was only a low murmur, but it seemed to contain countless emotions and desires. His warm breath brushed against her ear, bringing with it a tingling sensation. Muyan abruptly comes back to her senses. Her figure flashes and she leaves the man's embrace. He then looked in the direction of Ji Changming. Looking at the man's corpse, which had no bones left, only a pile of broken bones and internal organs was left. Mu Yang's complexion is ashen. Who told you to kill him? Her prey, the first prey she had finally caught after waiting for 4 years. He had planned to torture and take revenge, but his plan was ruined just like that. Chapter 63. It turns out that the person in front of her is actually the bastard who took advantage of her in the fog forest. A trace of astonishment flashes through the man's eyes, but it's gone in a flash. He says with a cold face, he wants to hurt you, and he won't allow anyone to hurt his woman. Mu Yang is so angry that she wants to laugh. Do you think he can hurt me? What's more, even if he wants to hurt me, what does it have to do with you? Who are you to me that you should meddle in other people's business? After saying that, Mu Yang feels a burst of discouragement. She decides not to bicker with this lunatic, and turns to leave. But before she can take 2 steps, her wrist is clasped, and she's pulled back. Her body is embraced into a wide, tight, and scorching embrace. Mu Yang frowns, and suddenly turns around to break free. But this time, not only does she not leave like before, her slender waist is embraced, and she's brought into his embrace. Immediately after, the man lowers his head, and unhesitatingly seizes her soft pink lips. Mu Yang suddenly opens her eyes wide, simply unable to believe everything that's happening at this moment. She's actually been molested by this bastard twice. Mu Yang lifts her unclasped hand, and ruthlessly flings it towards the man's face. But her slender jade-like hand is caught in the air by the man. Both of his hands are clasped behind her back, and her body is pressed into his embrace. Mu Yang wants to struggle, but whether it's internal force, or even summoning the Tianmo Qin, there's no response in front of this man. It's as if the entire field is firmly suppressed by his terrible coercion. The man seems to be very intoxicated by the sweet taste of her lips. His kiss is clearly very clumsy, and he doesn't even know that their lips and tongues are intertwined. He just greedily holds those 2 fragrant lips, and keeps sucking them. But the imposing manner conveyed by his body is incomparably overbearing, as if Mu Yang is his possession. No resistance, no escape. This kiss lasted for a long time before the man reluctantly let go of Mu Yang. However, his eyes still greedily swept from her delicate brows, to her straight nose, to her earlobes that were as translucent as jade pearls, and finally to her slightly swollen lips. Soon after, he slightly frowns, seemingly very displeased. At this time, Mu Yang is about to explode with anger. She can't wait to tear this guy who has repeatedly molested her into pieces. However, he didn't know where this man came from, but he was actually so powerful. Even though she was a Xiantian master, she had no way to fight back. But who would have thought that the man in front of him would actually use a somewhat dissatisfied and cold voice to say, "Why are you so weak? How are you going to follow me to the Xiaoxian continent? How are you even qualified to stand by my side? I'll give you 10 years to transcend the tribulation and ascend as soon as possible." Listening to the man's insufferably arrogant nagging, Mu Yan takes a deep breath, the corners of her mouth hooking up into a shy yet gentle smile. "Excuse me, may I ask who you are?" If someone familiar with Mu Yan, such as Xiao Bao, saw this smile, they would know that his mother is angry. Moreover, he was very angry. Whoever provoked him would definitely be unlucky. Unfortunately, the man in front of her didn't know that. Thus, when he saw the girl's clear and bright smile, his gaze wavered, and a hint of gentleness appeared in his cold expression. Chapter 64. Future Husband. Mu Yan raises her eyebrows. "Then today you came to propose." The ice-cold thin lips unhesitatingly spit out these 2 words, then he faintly says in a low, hoarse voice, "I want you to become my Di Ming Ju's wife." The light in Mu Yan's eyes becomes darker and darker, her voice slightly soft. "Since it's a marriage proposal, can you let me go first? My hand is hurting from your grip." Di Ming Ju stares blankly as he hears that, and promptly loosens the hand that was just holding her. His worried gaze falls on that slender wrist of hers. Sure enough, a red mark has appeared on that jade-white wrist. But that red mark isn't a flaw, on the contrary, it adds a kind of beauty that makes people's blood boil. Just like the girl's slightly swollen lips, so tender and alluring, making him unable to restrain himself from wanting to taste more. Ming-ju's eyes gradually darken. Step by step, he approaches Muyan, a flame of desire igniting in his eyes. The girl in front of him has a shallow smile, her eyes gentle, as if full of affection, waiting for him to embrace her. Zheng. A zither string makes a light sound. Ming-ju's pupils shrink, and his figure suddenly retreats like lightning. But in the end, his clothes are still cut open by the zither blade that pierces through the air. There's no longer a trace of gentleness on the girl's face, only a cold and enchanting smile remains. You want to propose marriage to me? I'm really sorry, even if all the men in the world were to die, the position of this lady's husband would still not be yours. Ming-ju's complexion is incomparably dark. He suddenly takes a step closer, wanting to pull the girl in front of him back into his arms, not allowing her to escape again. But suddenly, a white light flashes between the two. Immediately after, a small, jade-white hand ruthlessly pushes Ming-ju's direction. Don't bully Nyangqin. Internal force surges, its power overflowing. Originally, this bit of internal force couldn't pose any threat to Ming-ju. However, the moment the tender, white hand touches the corner of his clothes, Ming-ju's body suddenly becomes transparent like a phantom, and eventually disappears. Muyan looks at the empty space in front of her, unable to come back to her senses for a long time. So, this scoundrel, just like last time, suddenly appears and suddenly disappears. Mother! Xiaobao's aggrieved voice sounded in her ears. Mu Yang suddenly came back to her senses. She quickly bent down and picked up Xiaobao. She said nervously, Xiaobao, didn't you promise Nyangqin that you would obediently stay in the space and not come out? Xiaobao said with a cold expression, someone is bullying mother. Even if someone bullies Nyangqin, you can't just come out and take risks. Muyan says with a straight face, otherwise, if something happens to you, do you know how sad and scared Nyangqin would be? Promise me that you'll be obedient in the future. Xiaobao's delicate little face was still very tense, and his lips were tightly pursed, but he didn't say anything. Muyan's face sinks, and she crouches down to pull her son away from her arms. Jun Morchen, if you're so disobedient, Nyangqin will be angry. Hearing this, Xiaobao's tightened lips finally began to change. Her big blue eyes were filled with sparkling tears. The little child's face was full of grievance and unease, but he stubbornly gritted his teeth and refused to let his tears fall. Xiaobao, don't let anyone bully mother, I won't. His voice was hoarse and choked with sobs, and his tears finally fell uncontrollably. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.